Again, thanks for having me here. Again, as you pointed out, the first wave, one could take it for granted that many countries didn't know how to deal with it. But the second wave or the third wave, there's no excuse. In this case, when you have a government that's largely based on a particular kind of nationalism, which is one that portrays India as a very strong power, and that's what Narendra Modi's government has done. They not only let the guards down, but they kept boasting about how India is amazing at tackling COVID, but also promoting vaccine diplomacy and all of those points. So when you have an arrogant government, when you have got all kinds of problems between the center and the state, and when you have a public that was ill informed in this case, you have and I won't blame public per se, because in this case it was a government that actually encouraged a certain kind of easy attitude that it's over in India. I mean, the pandemic is over, and that's the main reason behind the spike in infection. Of course, one could blame the new variant and all of that, but the reality is the government. It's ultimately government's failure. Sadly not, because I said this person, Narendra Modi, is based on this whole image of being a strong leader who doesn't change his course. Now, in this case, in this case, what we have, of course, is Narendra Modi in the past presiding over massacre of Muslims. You have got Narendra Modi as a strong leader. In today's time, rather than accepting some kind of blame for what happened and even saying, well, change it, he keeps talking about how India is very well prepared to deal with it. So they'll essentially invest not in more hospital beds because they've not done that. They'll invest more in propaganda around this and blame everyone except Narendra Modi's leadership. And that's what's happening in India. So I don't see much future in terms of government acting properly. What may come happen, of course, is with more and more deaths, people will panic and people will deal with it, and virus might take a different course. But the reality is, government at every level has been failing, and it's failing not because it doesn't have the capacity. It's failing because it's choosing to focus more on image building around the prime minister rather than taking of the people. So again, I come from relatively privileged family and background in India. All my family is there. My elderly father, he's possibly COVID positive, and I say possibly because the test is difficult. There are relatives who are COVID positive for sure. So most of them are COVID positive at this point in time. And I'm talking of a family that's privileged. My own sister is a doctor, and her main worry is in terms of what if my dad needs hospitalization. Even with her being a doctor, she's saying that essentially it's very difficult to get hospital beds for my own dad. The reason I'm highlighting this is because if it happens with someone like me who has privileges, who has contacts, who has resources, imagine the situation for rural and even semi urban people who have no contacts. And in many cases, what I've heard is people are not getting tested. Even if they're getting tested, they're hiding the fact that they have COVID symptoms, because if they do get COVID positive, they lose their daily livelihood. I'm talking about those who are daily wage people who are very poor. So the situation is likely to be much worse than what's being projected even now. No, well, it started off okay, right? But you have to understand the huge population of India, and of course, whole kinds of WhatsApp news about whether it's safe to take vaccine or not. Again, in this case, what India has been doing is rather than proper research around what vaccines work and what they don't, they're trying to portray themselves as very good in terms of giving vaccination. And we have to understand that when things are being manufactured in India, like vaccination, India has obligation to provide vaccination to other countries. So we should not be talking of vaccine nationalism here, but focusing on what can be done more to manage the capacity of production. But finally, we have to understand this is not a result of a natural disaster of a COVID kind that one can't do anything about it. It's more of hubris, arrogance of the government that rather than preparing the population through better hospital facilities, investing more in hospitals, it has been investing more in image building around this prime minister. And that's the tragedy of India today.